welcome to another episode of Kerbal Space Program 2 Early Access. And on the 19th of December, the For Science update dropped. And now we have science parts, science points, the tech tree, and many quality of life improvements. And we have missions. I'm right now in my exploration mode save. This is the new mode. And I built a rocket to go to Tylo. It's a moon of Jool. Jool is like green Jupiter. And it's the last mission, as far as I know. And it's also one of the hardest. So let's start the rocket. And lift off. Right here you can see the 3 mammoth engines that bring this thing up into the upper atmosphere, and we will soon make orbit. And Tylo, or should I say Jool, is pretty far away, so we have a little bit more delta V than we need, but it's good to have more fuel. We are now starting the gravity turn, and it was a little bit too aggressive. I had to move a little bit to the left of the prograde marker, you can see on the nav ball. And I am pretty far in the tech tree, but I don't have everything unlocked. We are going to send a rover to Tylo, and the mission is more than just landing on Tylo. We have to land at a specific location on Tylo, on the Monument. And that's why I'm bringing a rover, so that we can land a little bit further away and then drive to it. And we just separated the 2 boosters on the side, and sadly, not like SpaceX, they will just crash in the ocean. They won't come back safely, but it's all about bringing the rover to Tylo. Our upper axis is already at 90 kilometers, and we are just cruising up to the upper axis. I got just enough fuel to make orbit with the main stage in the middle. So we don't have to use our deep space engine. That's one of the upper stages. The fairing will soon... the fairing is already decoupled, and you can now see that I'm making a maneuver node at the upper axis, and that's to circularize our orbit so we can get into low Kerbin orbit. This should be good, and the maneuver node is in 20 seconds. Maybe you can already see the rover. We also have a heat shield at the top. The plan is to aerobrake in Jool's atmosphere and then make the Tylo encounter. And Tylo is not the only moon of Jool. I will soon show you the other moons, but they have to wait. And obviously I'm taking the hardest mission I can possibly do around Jool, and Tylo has no atmosphere, so no aerobraking, no parachutes, and also it has the gravity of Kerbin. So, not exactly the gravity of Kerbin, but a little bit like Kerbin, without an atmosphere. And I just extended the solar panels and the communications dish on the rover, and the solar panels of the rover can power the whole rocket, and obviously we have the engines also giving us electricity, so that shouldn't be a problem. And one thing with the communications dish, it can't reach to Kerbin if we are at a little bit too far away. So if we would be at Jool, we can't communicate if we don't have Kerbals. So how do we do the mission? Well, I have a satellite in Jool Orbit, and its antenna is strong enough. So Kerbin can send a signal to the satellite, and the satellite can send a signal to the rover. So if we are right between Kerbin and Jool, in the middle phase, we may not have so good communications, but it should be okay. And we are already in orbit, so we will now make Jool as our target. You can maybe see the satellite, we are just focused on it. And the textures didn't really load in from Jool, but yeah. Oh, now the textures are there. So that's life. It's very Kerbin-like. It has water and oxygen. That's well, not really anything special. And that's Tylo. That's the place where we will land. And it looks pretty generic, just a rock. And there you can see the yellow marker, that's the monument in this little crater there. And that's the specific location where we will land. And most of the moons around Jool, like Bob and also Paul, are just some rocks that float around Jool, but Tylo is known to be one of the hardest targets to land on, and well, Lathe is a small Kerbin, so Jool has some special moons. And now we need to do the maneuver to get to Jool. And first I'm doing it at the periapsis, and you can maybe see that it can't really reach Jool right now, and I could just put in more fuel, but before I put in more fuel into the maneuver node, I always try to find a better location, and in many cases that works. So you can see now I don't need as much delta V to get to Jool, and I will later adjust it a little bit more. So before you waste delta V on any maneuver node, you can just move it around a little bit, especially if you go from low Kerbin orbit to interplanetary space. You should really move the maneuver and look what it does. And if I move it forward to the upper apsis, it doesn't do very much, but if I move it back, you can see that our Kerbal upper apsis is way higher, so we can throttle down a little bit and don't use so much delta V. And we still have some fuel in the main stage of the big mammoth engine, but it's only 376 delta V. So the whole mission will be done with the deep space engine that has 4,796 delta V, and the 2,500 in the rover lander stage are just to land. As I said, you can't use parachutes, so you need a lot of fuel to land on Tylo. And also we want to land on a specific location, so that's even harder. But also it gives 10,000 science points if we complete the mission, and that's a lot. We are right now doing the burn, and the deep space engine, I think it's called Tuber or something, it can extend the nozzle, and with rocket engines it's like the speed of the things coming out of the engine bell shouldn't have a high speed in vacuum, so the engine is more efficient. So if the engine bell is longer, the engine is more efficient. I won't go deep into the physics behind that, but it's how it is. So if the engine bell extends, we can save a little bit of space when it's not being used, and then we can have a more efficient engine. So that's why it can extend. And now I'm just checking if we have communications at the descending node. The descending nodes and ascending nodes are like you can see minus 1.1 degrees. So if I burn there, I can change the orbit so we are at the right inclination for Jool. In a few seconds we are going to do our burn to redirect a little bit so we get this weird inclination out. And one thing I have to say, I didn't launch at the Jool transfer window. That's something you would normally do, but I just launched at some point, and with this orbit I'm going to warp around a little bit. That's what I'm doing right now, and just wait for a good location to do a maneuver so I can get the encounter. And I tried to do a maneuver right there, but it didn't work out very well. It just would take too much delta V, and right there we have a free periapsis on Jool. So now I can adjust the periapsis so we can arrow brake and make orbit and then get the Tylo encounter. And Jool has a pretty big sphere of influence, or SOI for short, and a pretty high gravity, so it's not very hard to get an encounter. So with Jool I often just wait for an encounter and don't even bother with doing very not efficient maneuver nodes to get a good periapsis. And it seems pretty dramatic what I'm doing right now, but it's just 25 meters per second of delta V. So the maneuver nodes are a little bit I really don't like that you have to adjust them where they are planted, so you can't just have them like with you and look at the periapsis while you adjust the maneuver. And I did that, but it's very unpleasant to use the prograde and retrograde marker. So It would be cool if you had it like in the UI. You could like toggle something so you have a maneuver node in the UI, and that would be better. But right now we are now doing the burn like we should, and I'm not going into the atmosphere yet. I'm going to do that after we are in the sphere of influence. $250, that's 50, so 52,000 meters over the atmosphere. And you can see the satellite right there. And that would be our Jool periapsis. I'm right now doing a quick save, so I don't lose this progress. And after a little bit of thinking, I remembered that I have to look in what direction Tylo is rotating, and I saw that we are rotating in the wrong direction. And by luck, by accident, I got a Tylo encounter just right there. And now I don't even have to do the arrow braking. I can just go to Tylo. And that's pretty good. I'm happy about that. And that's also one point that I don't like about the game right now. You can't really see from what direction your ship will be coming and in what direction it will go out. You can't really see that right now. That's a little bit weird that you can't see that. We need arrows or something, and like these weird blue circles. It would be cool if you could hover over them and see what's the entry point and the exit point. I can't really see that. So I always have problems with moons because I have to obviously go into the right direction. So it's not that bad of an encounter. So we go with the rotation of the moon and not against it. And I have the thrust limiter enabled on the deep space engine. So it's not so erratic if you just do the throttle. And I like to use the thrust limiter so I can do adjustments like this. And 120 kilometers is perfect for Tylo. I would recommend that orbit height. And it's also low orbit, so you can get low over science. We are now warping to the encounter, and I know that you can see where the entry and the exit is right there on the right, but you can't really see it on Jool's SOI, so that's a little bit weird. And obviously there are many bugs, but nothing that I can deal with. And so far, I didn't encounter any bugs in this mission. Now we are warping to Tylo, and the camera was doing a little bit weird stuff. And now we are focusing on Tylo, and you can see that I used an equatorial orbit so we can get a good land zone right there where the yellow marker is, so I don't have to adjust so much, because if I have a polar orbit, it's hard to land there. And we just made some science points, and you can see that the science icon on the up left corner of the screen, or like up left middle, is blinking or getting green and then white. The radiation survey is right now doing his stuff, and we have 3 science experiments. We have the radiation survey, we have the science junior. Some people might remember the science junior from KSP 1. And we also have the sample grabber, that's like a rover sample grab arm, and that's to do some ground science. And you don't even need... Oh, it's finished right there. You don't even need Kerbals to do some ground analysis, or stone analysis, depends where you land, on what planet, but it will only take about 1000 delta V to circularize our Tylo Orbit, and that's okay. We have enough, 2800 in our deep space stage, and then 2500 to land. It should work out. Obviously, I have to do quick saves, because I don't really want to lose all the progress I did, and the game is intended to do quick saves, so you don't have to do everything all over again. And I know there are some people that like to play without quick saves and without reverting to the launchpad or to the VAB, but it's just not worth the time for me, and I'd rather load a quick save 100 times than have to do a mission 100 times. And I'm now pointing at the maneuver node, and we should soon warp to the maneuver node, and then we can also do low over science, so low over Tylo science, and that's a lot of science points that you get from Tylo because it's so far away. Five seconds. And we are doing the burn. And after we are in orbit, we are pretty much safe. So let's see. And another thing, the hardest part of the mission is the landing, so we aren't safe yet, but I have good skills. I can land on a planet. And I'm right now doing some sketchy warping to get the landing zone into daylight. It wouldn't be a big problem to land at night, but it's just not cool for the video, so I warped a little bit and made a save. Also, the science experiment is running, and one thing I have to say, with the science experiments that take a little while, so the radiation survey takes 1 minute, it's a little bit weird, because you don't get extra science. So if you're performing a experiment like the radiation survey, and you're over the lowlands biome, over in maybe low orbit or high orbit, and then you go into highlands, it stops, and you can only do it further if you go back to the lowlands biome. But you don't get new science points if you do different biomes. So I like that you can't just fly over a different biome and get other measurements and other science points, and still you get other science points new science points if you land in a different biome, but only if you land there, so not if you fly over it. And that's pretty realistic. I mean, it doesn't really change anything if you're over an ocean or over land. If you're in vacuum, it doesn't have really an impact. So that's good, but it's really not that great that you always have to resume that science thing and wait for the craft to be over the same biome as you started. So, yeah. And it's pretty difficult on planets that have many biomes. On Tylo, it's not that bad. I don't actually know what biomes are on Tylo, but things like highlands, lowlands, craters, that's always like on planets. And while I was talking, I did this maneuver node, so we are just now warping to it, and you can see the red line. That's a pretty cool feature. That's where you will burn. So you can see we will burn a little bit into the new flight direction, and we will land next to the crater. So a little bit further away, but I will adjust it soon. And now we will start the burn. You can see the periapsis and the apoapsis going crazy, and soon there won't be periapsis. And one good thing with the rover is I can explore many different biomes without having to launch a new mission. So I can just drive from the crater to the monument, then drive out of the crater, do new science experiments, and that's a lot of science you get. And obviously you can't return the science, but you can transmit the data, and that's enough science points. And it's harder to get Kerbals somewhere because you have to get them back, and you don't really have to get them back. But why do you bring Kerbals if you don't bring them back? So if you don't bring them back with the same launch vehicle, you should at least do a rescue mission. I know there are some crazy people that just let the Kerbals die on the surfaces, so they don't really die, but they stay there forever. And I like to do missions with probes that just land there and never come back, and if the missions come back, I like to bring Kerbals because you can just bring them. I mean, they're not way heavier than a probe core, so it makes sense to bring them if you go back. And we will now do another retrograde burn to slow us down, and I just paused the game to check in my head if I did everything right, because it's very intense to fly this thing, and it's not the most stable, especially the lander stage. And you can really see that the thrust to weight ratio, so the ratio between the weight of the craft and the thrust power, is pretty low on the deep space engine. Engines that are very efficient tend to have low thrust numbers. So that's why I have 4 FATs. That's like some engines that are radially mounted on the sides, and I have them because they don't burn off the solar panels. And because facing the other direction, I'm now going prograde on a nav ball, but I'm really going retrograde if engines are facing retrograde. And one thing, I forgot to drop the heat shield because I was in map mode the whole time, and I just forgot about the heat shield because I didn't have to use it. I could have just dropped it way sooner, but we still have the needed delta V to land. Now it's just a question if I have the skill to land. And you can see the Tylo Monument is 23 kilometers away. And we are 20 kilometers high, so we should be 3 or 4 kilometers away if we land. And now is the most difficult part of the mission. And we are only going 300 meters per second, but that will increase exponentially if we drop down further. And we are right now going nearly straight down. And that's the most dangerous part of the mission, because I could mess up something right now. You can see the stones that are arranged in a circle on the Tylo Monument. And also, one thing that Kerbal players might see, I don't have landing legs, and the plan is to land on the front wheels. We have to be very slow to do that, so nothing breaks. And if everything goes well, we would fall onto our 6 wheels, and the fuel tank on the back would just clonk on the ground and would stay there, and then we could detach. In the worst case scenario, we would tip the other way, so we tip forward and the rover is on his backside, and we can't really tip us over then, but we have now landed and we are falling in the right direction. That's what I wanted. And we could do science experiments right now, but I'd rather first retract the solar panels and detach this weird fuel tank thing. And we need fuel on the ground so we can detach it, because if we just detach it, the wheels get caught on the engine bells, and that's not good. So the engine nozzles would then just take the wheels and never let them go. So I have to apply a little bit of thrust, detach, and then drive away. Hopefully the back wheels, which are the main target of the thrusters, won't burn off. Because obviously we now have re-entry heating, and not only re-entry heating, we have heating in general. So you can see those red markers. The wheels didn't burn off, but it exploded. And also we just barely made it. So the red markers right there are a little bit full. Now I'm extending the solar panels so we can get electricity. It's the only way to get electricity for me, and that's a weird bug. I encountered that before. It says blocked by Tylo, although the sun is obviously there and could just shine on the solar panels. There are ways to fix the bug. You can go out of the game and reload a save and then go back to the vessel. For me, that works normally. Or you can just time warp, and if you're lucky, the solar panels just know then that on the next day the sun will be there, and then they can produce electricity again. So the bug is fixable, but it's a little bit annoying. And I just applied the brakes to do some science experiments, because we are in the biome craters, and that's science points. And you can see the arm extending and collecting some data from the ground. And we can do all of those experiments again if we are at the monument. And then we can transmit the science back to Kerbin. The experiment is right now in progress, the radiation observation, and I'm accelerating time in the game so it goes a little bit quicker. You can do that. Also with engines you can do that, so that's a cool feature. And now we will start to drive. And I have to say, I over-engineered this thing a little bit, and also a bug, the wheels sometimes sink in the ground. I only had this with Tylo, this bug, but maybe it's on all planets or on some planets. And if you know meters per second, you know that we are going pretty fast for a rover, very fast for a rover. We are like a rover supercar. We are going about 100 kilometers per hour, and for all the Americans out there, that's about like 70 miles per hour maybe. Well, that's 110 kilometers per hour, but 33 meters per second, that's about 110 kilometers per hour, and the speed is not consistent because I'm braking and accelerating, and sometimes there's downslope or upslope, but it's pretty fast for a rover. The NASA Mars rovers are very, very slow, like a few centimeters per second. And we are going, 34 meters per second. That's a little bit fast. And it's getting faster. On a good downslope, it can even get over 40 meters per second. And that's a little bit crazy, but I'm trying to throttle down a little bit. So I'm just rolling right now. And we are at the monument. We did the mission, but for me the mission is not over yet. We want to do some science experiments, and that's what we are going to do. So now that we extend all the science experiments again at the monument, we should soon see how much science points we have. We have 4,500 data, and that will get higher because the radiation survey is still running. And we are now starting to transmit all our science points. And I like the system that you can see every science report and you can transmit the science reports at any time. Just takes a little bit of electricity, and obviously you have to have a ComNet connection. I hope you enjoyed the video, and bye!